$800,000.
6 to 7. 6 to 7.
I believe by the time we're done, we're closer to 8.
Mm-hmm.
So in light of that, and if your original estimate was in the $500,000 figure, and if I was making a grant proposal, does it surprise you? And most of the time, I would make a grant proposal at a higher number, looking at what could happen as opposed to a lower number. Is your firm surprised that the final price could be, what, 50% more, 50, 60% higher than what you had estimated?
As I mentioned before, those numbers were purely estimates. The design of the system continued after the grant was received, so there were changes that were made.
If I could, when the estimate was put in, was your firm looking at, number one, an outbuilding being used, the building we're using, well, I assume it was your firm taking into account the size of what the building would end up being, the new nursing home, and was your estimate taking into account heating the core plus at least 2 wings or all 4 wings?
Very conceptual estimate, again, in order to get the grant in time to have the project eligible for the grant.
Thank you. I understand conceptual, but
so
could
all
you
of
answer
that
me?
stuff, I think all of that stuff was still in the mix at that point.
But not in the cost.
There had not been a decision.
But your estimate was to have the boiler put in a remote building, the old nursing home.
I believe at that point the estimate was specifically looking at using the old nursing home.
Okay. And on top of that, were you looking at tying in the old nursing home into that boiler also? And I guess my final question is, were you looking at the entire building as where it stands at that number in your sizing?
Is it keeping the existing nursing home in its entirety? Is that
Correct.
What you're
I
asking?
think you're right.
It was just 2 wings.
I don't recall specifically because I believe we were always looking at just kind of keeping the core, maybe 2 wings.
Thank you.
So I don't recall.
Representative McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sorensen, Commissioner Sorensen, has Biomass been here and looked at the building and said, okay, this is what we need, basically, this is all we need in order to bring the boiler in and get it set up? Has that been done?
I don't know. I know the engineer, McGill, whatever that, McGill Engineering, said back in 2009 when I went back and looked through the minutes of the building committee, said that the core section was critical in putting the boilers in there. That's all it was said in the minutes.
Follow up, sir.
And was waiting for a decision as to when that could be done, and I said, I think in the minutes, it could be done as early as September, but it didn't happen.
Okay, my point is this. A bid went out, and the bid stated for the installation of this big, huge system. But now we know that it's not the installation, that the installation is already covered in the cost of the equipment. So couldn't that bid be considered to be erroneous and it should be rebid, not saying to install, but to hook up? And I would recommend we get somebody in from Biomass and tell us, look, we're going to bring the pellet stove in next week. This is what we need done prior to that so that we can install it. And then after it's installed, if there's other things that have to be done for the hookup, which I don't think there will be, then maybe we can put out another bid.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I did call Charlie Agnew, who sold us the furnaces, and I told him, does $375,000 sound out of range? Because I thought it did too, to be honest with you. He said he thought about it, and he said no. He said really on the installations that he's had, that could very well be a real number.
Well, then you're back to installation again. And the installation is free. It comes with the cost. So to ask him, you know, is that a good price for installation? And he said, yes, that's reasonable. Might be so. But according to this, the installation is covered in the cost. So you should go back and ask them, is that a reasonable price for hooking it up?
That's what I asked him.
Thank you. I have one last before we go. Steve, I'm going to start wrapping this section up. Do you have something else to say, Representative?
Yeah, I just had one more question,
Yeah.
and that was the asbestos-laden tiles. Is that they've been taken out? That cost, is that cost absorbed by the new nursing home costs, or has it been paid, or?
It's absorbed by that $375,000.
Our contract.
It's part of the $375,000.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. I just have one more question going back to, and I apologize for not knowing the name of the original consultant sitting here. Was there a top dollar when Senator Shaheen was kind enough to come forward and help us with this pellet boiler? Was there a top end number that this boiler and installation could not exceed when we'd asked for their help for this?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I do.
You do?
Yes. Yes.
Part of the discussion, and to go back to Maria Gonzalez's comments about the figures that the engineering firm came up with, was the grant was limited, for the purchase of the boiler was limited to $200,000. That was as much as we were ever going to get from the federal government. In order to qualify for that $200,000, we had to present a bid package,
Right.
a bid proposal for that grant. After that happened, after we were awarded the grant, the designing and the extent, if you will, of the system continued to be going onward as the process moved forward. But we were limited to $200,000 for the boiler and the other $200,000 for the piping. The one variance that we were able to get Senator Shaheen to get for us was we underspent on the piping budget, and we're able to move part of the piping grant into the boiler purchase grant, because the boiler was going to cost more than $200,000. So those two things happened. And while I've got the floor, just one last thing. It's very important to integrate these two systems completely for just exactly what Representative McConkey said. The efficiencies of propane, if you will, may or may not happen. The presence of natural gas probably will happen. We could very well be in a position 5 or 6 or 8 years from now of converting our propane boilers to natural gas and reducing the use of our pellet, but it gives us the option or the ability to be very choosy about our fuel sources, where in the past, when we only had propane as an option, as a fuel source, we had no flexibility whatsoever.
Thank you. And Steve, I'll take a quick point here from you in one moment. So the grant had a high-end limit of $200,000, and for right or for wrong, we supplied documentation in the neighborhood of $500,000 enabled us to get there, but in hindsight, turned out to be a very low number. Steve, you had one last comment.
Yes, to answer your question, Representative McConkey, I have the report from EGA, the report on possible reuse of the Mountain View dated July 13, 2009, area for reuse and new program. This analysis assumes the resident wings will be demolished and the center wing of the building will remain, leaving approximately 15,000 square feet of the structure remaining. New construction will close off the areas exposed by the removal of the wings. The main kitchen will remain, along with its equipment, offices, locker area, and bathrooms. The dining room will become a large meeting room. The current boiler room and electrical room will remain. New offices, central bathrooms, a laundry room expansion, and storage will also be accommodated. And what I'd like to lastly say is that now that we're stating the boilers are not going to get here till the beginning of February, they've already projected a 3-month hookup time, which now puts us at May 1. Granted, these things should have already been up and online, but we're already going to miss the entire heating season. And granted, the sooner they're up and running, the sooner we start saving money. but if these things are not gonna be up and online till May 1, we could take a little bit of extra time to see if we could get a more competitive bid to maybe closer to 500,000 or something. This rush to judgment, 44 hours prior to the original meeting is not acceptable.
Thank you for your point. Thank you for the follow-up on the information. So it appears that or if I understand that information correctly, that your first, your $500,000 projection was for the core building only, and for tying heating systems back into that. Steve, if I could, on the question of the bidding, that's a commissioner's issue. That is their power, that's their decision to do. It doesn't really come before us. I understand your frustration, and I share quite a bit of it with you. Yes, Representative Merrill.
The only question I had, rebidding is fine, but how much of this are we locked into legally? I mean, are we at the point, we've gotten some good information here, but are we, whether you like it or whether you don't, is this what we're going to get because of the contracts, et cetera, we've signed that we couldn't get out of or not?
We've signed the agreement for the 375,000 to put it in, and all the equipment, yeah.
So basically,
it's done deal.
It's a done deal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. No further questions from the subcommittee. We'll move on now to rehab of the old nursing home. First question on here, because we've seen numbers back and forth. I know that Bob's been working on this. Total square foot, the core of the old nursing home?
I've got 165,000.
The core.
The core.
The core.
I mean, 16,000.
15 we've been using it.
Yeah.
How much, what is it?
So is it 15 or 16,000 square
The
feet?
assumption was to save approximately 15 in all of the EGA studies and the budgets that were in.
Thank you.
15,000.
Does the commissioner understand and believe that, 15,000 square feet?
I had a little more than that.
I must have been tearing down a little.
I had 16,000.
Okay, so the commissioner's point is there's 16,000 square feet in the old, in the core of the old building.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And how many square feet are you saying, or are you of the understanding each one of the wings is?
That I don't have.
They're approximately 5. They vary slightly, like about 5,000 each.
5,000 each, so it's another 20,000 square feet.
Right.
Thank you. How many square feet's required for the new boiler room?
720.
Is that what's required, or we're allowing in a couple hundred extra square feet because it'd be nice to move my fanny through that space too?
That's what the size of the room is.
I think the idea was to salvage some of those existing walls and then fire rating.
Okay.
So I'm not sure of the footage exactly, but it's no more than 1,000.
Okay. How many square feet's in the present maintenance department? The way it's existing right now?
720 was.
Okay. And in the new building, is there office space that was being used, is now being used for maintenance over there, office space for the maintenance department?
But
I can touch on these questions if you want.
Please.
The proposed square footage for the new maintenance department, that's, we moved out of the old maintenance shop right next door into the old activities room, which is about 1,400 square feet. I want to take a little over 600 square feet of the old dining room. And at one point I had requested almost 1,000 square feet of resident rooms. Whether I get that or not is yet to be determined. So I'm looking for a total of about 2,900 square feet. That's combined maintenance shop and storage, whatever I can put in there.
Okay, so Bob, you had 720 square feet in the old building, plus you had outdoor storage containers.
That's right.
Okay, how big were those that are out there?
There are 2 storage containers that we're using outside at 320 square feet each. And we're using the generator building, which is, give or take, 780 square feet.
What are you using in the generator building?
Storage, cold storage. Anything that's outside is cold.
And thank you. So your 2 outside storage buildings, storage containers that you have right now, combined are 720 square feet? No, excuse me, 640 feet?
Yeah.
640 feet, then add in the 780 for the generator house, and then add in the 720 square feet, which of my old maintenance shop, and that's what I was.
Okay. Where's the old generator house? I don't
It's
remember.
that white building that's between here and the farm.
That's
Between the old building, the old nursing home and the farm.
what condition's that space in?
Well, it's cold storage. I mean, it's good for a generator house.
What
It's a-
sort
it's
of
a-
thing?
it's a
What sort of
great-
things you storing in there now? Beds and that sort of thing?
Old wheelchairs, physical therapy equipment, some old furniture, old, geez, you name it, it's in there.
Does that have a roof over it and it's solid?
It has a solid roof. Yeah, that building's in good shape.
Okay. And who's going to, if all of this goes forward, who's going to pick up that space, the 720 feet?
The farm. The farm boys are going to take that over.
Okay.
They're going to be demolishing one of their buildings that they're using for storage, and what they have in there, they want to put in the generator house.
Okay. Thank you. Back to the commissioners, do we rent or own those 2 containers, 640 square feet?
We own them.
And what condition are they in?
I haven't looked at them, but they're sitting on the ground. Did you say that one of them leaked? Or did
Well, when we get a lot of rain, water gets in there. Whatever we put in there is really not safe from water. There's an extreme amount of condensation that builds up in those because of the temperature changes. Springtime, there is some flooding because of the ground. They sit right on the ground.
Do you have any idea if they're aluminum or steel?
Steel.
Steel.
Structurally, I'd say they're in fair shape, but they're not ideal for what we're using it for.
Thank you. I know they're not ideal for what you're doing, but structurally they're fine. And it sounds to me like springtime's probably the way we've sited them and where they're sitting in relationship to the surrounding land around it and water. Possibly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're in a
thank
bad
you.
location.
Okay. So the commissioners, those storage containers, what do you see us doing with that?
I don't have a plan for those.
Okay. Do you, okay, so I have we're down to the laundry room. How many square feet for the present laundry?
650.
And I know there was a report that talked about keeping new clothes in a separate area and doing flow-through traffic, and the benefits of that. What's the expanded size of laundry?
Well, I'm not sure what the square footage is of the new room that it would go into. That was all in the. You have a floor plan of that EGA drew years ago.
Okay.
Just a conceptual design. But the benefit of that really is infection control. We need to keep dirty laundry coming in one way and clean laundry going out the other way. Right now, it's mixed.
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand that. We've had that discussion before.
Okay.
But we don't know how much additional square footage that'll take up?
Almost double what we have presently.
So 1,300.
1,300 square feet, and you know it's 1,300 square feet because you've had a study and they've told you 1,300 square
I
feet.
think we had, just from my notes, we had approximately 1,600 combined, new and old,
There's a passageway too.
for the laundry. If you count we were going through the old Barber Beauty, people are familiar with that, and then around the electrical room. Combined, that's about 1,600.
Okay, so the number we all like is 1,600 square feet? Because if you have 15,000 square feet, you're saying you need 1,600 square feet for the laundry.
That's the number that we've given to the delegation.
Okay, thank you. Representative Pengill?
So I'm just clarifying that with the BPS November 2nd estimate, it was 1,600.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
exactly what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Same thing.
To the commissioners, do you have a fixed cost associated with expanding the laundry, and what profit analysis do you have to justify the expansion?
When we looked at doing all the laundry, we had an estimate for a folding machine of something like 85,000,
Well, yeah.
and that was just ridiculous to spend that amount of money for a folding machine. We met, Sandy and I, and the linen service out of Laconia. we met and discussed the contract, and we decided that we would be better off staying with the contract with the linen service and not expanding and doing all the laundry ourselves. But we will expand to do some additional items to help reduce that cost, like face cloths, towels, those kinds of things that are presently being sent out.
Thank you. In light of that,
Yep.
it would seem to me that you don't need to double, more than double your space then for what you know today. If you're at 650 square feet and I'm going to add another washer, I'm going to add another towel, another table to fold things, it would seem to me that your 1,600 square feet was to do a much larger expansion.
Can I elaborate on that?
Yes.
We're not going to need any real capital expenditures for equipment for this. We're not going to need to buy another washer. We're not going to need to buy another dryer. We have those at the jail that they're willing to do some trading with us on. More importantly is the 650 square feet of laundry space that they're using now is I touched on this a few minutes ago. There's dirty laundry and clean laundry is combined in the same room.
It's not clearly defined.
It's not segregated, and it really needs to be. You need to have the dirty laundry. You need to have that flow, and right now it's mixed.
Okay.
You need to have a clean place to fold and stack
I
laundry.
understand that, but you're adding 1,000 square feet for something that was done at 650 feet. And your presumption was when we went to 1,600 feet that it would allow you to do a much larger operation.
I might dispute those square footage numbers.
I'd like to know, Bob.
Well, I really want to go over there with a tape measure and measure what there actually is. But we're only talking about going through the old barber and beauty shop, which would just be used as a passageway, and then going into the old social services room. Which I don't know what the square footage of that room is.
The old laundry and that new space is 1,600.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It doesn't look it.
No, the idea was given to us when we ran the budget, Mark, was basically to create a circular traffic pattern.
I understand that. I understand that we've talked that one through. But my point is that circular motion and all of that, and I sat here listening to the commissioner saying that we could start doing this in-house, that we were going to use labor from the jail and so forth to do this, and that this was the space we needed. And this building is not anything set in granite. It's evolving. My point is that 1,600 may be more space than what you need at this point.
It's the layout of the rooms. We're not changing the layout.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no construction other than opening up a couple of doorways.
It's basically demolition.
Yeah.
For the most part.
The walls are already there.
Okay.
To answer your question, yeah, it could probably use a little bit less square footage, but why build less when you have a room that you can move right into, even if it's a little bigger than what you need?
I understand your point.
Okay.
I'm looking at it from the point we have 15,000 square feet. How much do we really need out of that 15,000 square feet? How much is left? You're already talking on some of these other uses that you're going to have to demolish some walls, make some changes. You're going to have to do electrical. So if you're looking at a building in a whole, and I know that my only building I have is 15,000 square feet, and I may need 800 less to accomplish one chore or the other, that's 800 square feet that I might be able to use for something else. That's my only point. Speaking of the building itself, well, I had another question. How much usable square footage remain in the core structure if the laundry, maintenance, and boiler room are deducted? So if we stay with your 1,600 square feet of for the laundry, and the boiler space, if someone remember correctly, how many square feet that ended up being?
720.
720.
720.
Electrical is roughly 300.
Electrical is what?
300 plus or minus.
So those are the three numbers that we know.
And don't forget the old boiler room, which is there.
Well, that's what I'm looking for. I really want to get to a number because our numbers keep changing.
Probably another 600 or so 600 square feet. We didn't measure it, but it's
Which
about
one?
the old boiler room. That's part of that 15,000 square feet.
Oh, you're right. You're right, I don't, well, it's the same as the activity room.
700 or 800 feet.
Yeah,
Looking at
that's right.
The old boiler room?
The old boiler room with the existing
Yeah.
propane gas.
Could someone give me an ish number that tells me if I take away 15,000? It's absolutely preposterous that we can't sit here and that you can't give me a number, how many square feet that is. I'd ask the information. Do the commissioners have what that number is?
What's the balance?
Yeah, how much out of
Roughly-
15,000?
Roughly 10,500.
Roughly 10,500 square feet is what remains.
That's right.
Is that rough enough that that's your number?
Pretty close.
Close enough for the commissioners, I would assume.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any new cost estimates for the rehab of the building core, that have not been previously shared with the entire delegation? What's your
No.
latest estimate?
Hasn't changed since November 2nd, I don't believe.
So 1.5.
That November 2 summary that was given to the delegation, I believe is it. That's where that stopped.
Which was 1.5 million, which would remove the rest of the wings, save the core, and make the changes that we've discussed previously, which would be electrical, engineering, maintenance, laundry, and boiler.
That question?
Yeah. The 1.5 million was to save the core of the building, remove the wings,
I can tell you in a second. It's just the summary, it's really the summary of that November 2nd report. Plus soft costs. So
Which-
I would calculate, if you said 450, 850, it's roughly 1.5 plus soft costs, I would say.
You got this?
If you took everything off that November 2 report, and I'm not sure that's the intention, Mark, but
Okay, what I'm looking for is, and I would hope we're talking about the same number. 1.5 million removes the 4 wings, is that correct? Part of that cost at 1.5 million?
I'm not sure where the 1.5 is coming from, Mark. That's not a number that
I thought that
I don't believe.
was the number that you-
Figure 1.2 came up.
No,
Then if you take the November,
That's what
You
you
got right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
if you just take the November 2 letter, pick the items that you would like, if it's all of them, then it's, I'd say you're right, it's approximately 1.5, but that does not include a contingency, equipment, or design cost, soft costs, as a budget.
Okay, let's go to the point.
Yep.
The delegation, at least my members sitting here, and the impression that we have a $1.5 million cost that was provided to us. Okay. Back in November 2nd. Of that in that $1.5 million cost, did that involve removing the 4 wings? My understanding, it did.
I would say that would be true without soft costs. If
Okay,
you took off,
forget soft costs for now. Your soft costs are for what now? Engineering,
would
so
be
forth?
owner's costs, engineering, design, a contingency, those types.
The contingency, which could run as much as 20% more?
Well, I think what we did at the time is we told the delegation, for round numbers, use 20% for all soft costs for that one line item.
Okay. So not counting a 20% soft cost, $1.5 million, which nothing has changed since the November 2nd report that we have, gives us the core building standing by itself, 4 wings removed, boiler up and running, tying in both buildings, expanded, well, there could be an extra cost for the tie-in, I shouldn't say that. What I'm saying is the space is ready for that, for the boiler. The space is ready for what you're anticipating to be 1,600 square feet for a laundry, anticipating the needs of the maintenance Bob supervisor with his square footage, $1.5 million plus possibly another 20%, Nothing's changed since we've had that number.
The only thing I'd like to clarify is